Walking is one of the most underappreciated and underutilized activities in the human arsenal of exercises. The average human in prehistoric times is believed to have walked about 8 miles a day, or 16,000 steps. Compare that to the average American today, who walks about 2.5 miles each day, or only 5,000 steps. And it's pretty evident that we're walking far less than we used to. This shift is notable throughout the industrialized world. For example, in Japan, the average person walks about 7,000 steps each day, and in Switzerland, that number is about 10,000. This drop off from that 16,000 step average that we used to do in the past is largely a result of the rise of civilization, especially through the dawn of planes, trains, and automobiles. Why is it that Americans in particular are walking far less than those in other countries? And could whatever it is that's causing us to walk less also be the driver for the United States being one of the most obese countries in the world? Walking on 2 feet is fundamentally human. The precursors to the modern human started walking upright about 7 million years ago. Today, we have an uncanny ability to traverse very long distances with almost no rest. While it's easy to think of humans as weaker, slower, and less athletic than other animals, the truth is that we possess a number of very peculiar traits. For example, the mechanisms required to walk upright on 2 feet requires far less energy than it takes to walk on 4 legs. Plus, our ability to perspire and our relatively hairless skin, which enables the quick evaporation of sweat, gives us the power to keep our core body temperatures cooler than other animals. So these highly evolved traits give us the ability to move ourselves across long distances relatively efficiently. And we have a built-in cooling system that prevents us from overheating. This enabled us to hunt animals by tracking them over long distances until they eventually collapsed of heat exhaustion, a process known as persistence hunting. Most of our history is one of living as hunter-gatherers and nomads. But with advancements in agriculture, we began building permanent settlements, which served as the foundation of modern cities. Although the path wasn't linear, over time, cities did become larger and more sophisticated. However, one thing did remain fairly constant throughout. Walking was the primary form of transportation. Cities were designed such that most daily errands could be accomplished by foot. This has been the case in cities around the globe and throughout history, ranging from ancient Mesopotamia all the way to 19th century Boston. Between the mid 1800s and early 1900s, there were some changes in the way that people moved around, thanks to railroads, streetcars, and the emergence of public transit systems in larger cities. But this technology mostly supplemented walking rather than replacing it altogether. Starting in the early 1900s and accelerating in the 1950s following World War II, car ownership became ubiquitous in America. While most of the cities that rose to prominence in pre-war times, such as New York and Chicago, already had walkable infrastructure that was established prior to the rise of the automobile, many of the country's fastest growing cities in the second half of the 20th century, such as Houston, Phoenix, and Dallas, were designed specifically around the car, which became the primary mode of transportation. This explains why American cities are typically more sprawled out compared to their European counterparts, which were established a much longer time ago. This new car-centric design, which became the status quo in America, has led to the rise of entirely car-dependent communities in which one will spend a collective average of 4.3 years of their lives in self-propelled steel cages on highways and major arterial roads rather than simply being able to walk from point A to point B. Vibrant streets filled with pedestrians and locally owned establishments have given way to large boulevards and highways that are less pleasant to be on when you're not in a car and totally devoid of any human activity that exists outside of driving. This abandonment of walkable designs has made it very unappealing to would-be pedestrians. The urban layout of most American cities makes walking dangerous, time-consuming, boring, and sometimes outright logistically infeasible. The car has essentially become a prosthetic that we need rather than an item of convenience that helps to elevate our lives. Even a quick run to the store to pick up batteries or toilet paper requires jumping in the car and driving for some distance. Even when the straight line distance of a destination is relatively short, a pedestrian has to cross through an obstacle course of highways, crosswalks, major intersections, lack of sidewalks, expansive parking lots, and very roundabout ways to reach the final destination. A quick way to gauge the walkability of any neighborhood or city is to look up your area on walkscore.com. I've compiled a list of the walk scores of the 50 largest cities in the United States. And as you can see, the older cities, which were built prior to the rise of the automobile, tend to also be the most walkable, while the cities that have exploded in population over the last 5 or 6 decades are mostly car dependent. This isn't an anti-car video. Rather, I made this video to highlight how we have built modern environments, especially in the US, that have made walking as a form of transportation, even for minor errands, infeasible to the point where a person who wants to enjoy a nice walk can't do so because it's totally impractical. The result is a precipitous drop in the total number of daily steps taken and total miles walked per day. This switch to the automobile is a form of cultural evolution in which our technology-driven lifestyles have evolved much faster than our biological hardware, and this is not without consequences. I plotted this graph of 2020 obesity rate data to walk scores for the list of 50 cities mentioned earlier in this video. And we can see a clear trend. For cities that are more walkable, obesity rate tends to be lower. I should point out that there are many factors that influence obesity, so the correlation isn't going to be super strong, but the trend is undeniable. Odds are that living in car-dependent environments will increase your chances of being obese and having unwanted body weight, while the effect is less so in walkable areas. But exactly how much higher are the odds? I have you covered there as well. I also grouped all 50 cities into one of 3 buckets based on their walkability rating. And we see that obesity rate jumps by 36% between very walkable and car-dependent cities. As I noted before, walking is one of the most fundamentally human things that we can do. Yet, particularly in America, we have virtually eradicated the need for extensive walking out of our lives. Walking as a mode of transportation has been reduced to moving ourselves to and from our cars. Some of us go to great lengths to minimize this distance as well by fighting for the nearest parking spot to our destination. And in some cases, I literally do mean fighting. I also find it interesting that here in America, we tend to really enjoy vacation destinations that are highly walkable, or at least attempt to simulate walkability. Take the Las Vegas Strip, for example, as the many hotels curate an experience that eliminates the need for a car, making life for the average visitor much more enjoyable. Ironically, many of the attractions in Las Vegas mimic actual walkable places like Paris, New York City, and Venice. I find a great deal of irony that human evolution is oftentimes represented by the primate that's walking on all fours and eventually transitioning into a human that's walking upright. Perhaps this illustration should be modified to show the next phase of humanity, which is a person sitting in a car, not walking at all. I fear that our hyper-reliance on automobiles as an all-purpose form of transportation, rather than being a supplement to walking, has marked a turning point at which the disevolution of our abilities as ultra-endurance athletes has begun. What we don't use, we will eventually lose. And the results are beginning to show. Extreme car dependency in America has resulted in reduced physical activity, contributing to the rise in chronic diseases that are most common today. Walking may not seem to cause a huge difference because it's such a low intensity exercise, but because walking on 2 feet is so synonymous with being human, I suggest that it's the single most important exercise that we learn to do pretty quickly after birth. Through routine and frequent walking, you will help yourself to maintain a healthy weight and lose body fat. You'll also better regulate your insulin, which could ultimately help you to prevent many of the diseases of civilization, including heart disease, stroke, hypertension, diabetes, etc. But the health benefits don't end there. By frequent and daily walking, you can also improve your cardiovascular fitness, increase bone density, build endurance, and increase your energy levels. In addition to the physical benefits, walking can also be very therapeutic because it gives us time to break away from the stresses of life and spend some time in our own thoughts. In fact, according to Stanford University, walking can help to boost creativity by as much as 60%. It should also be noted that many of the world's greatest breakthroughs in science and arts came about while taking a long walk. Churchill, Jobs, Darwin, and Nietzsche were all avid walkers, and Aristotle opened up his walking school in which philosophical discussions were conducted while, you guessed it, walking. I'm a big believer in only worrying about what you can control. In this case, short of voting, being an urban planner, or being in a position to enact policies, there isn't much we can do to change the nature of our cities and the resulting car dependency. So we must focus on adapting by altering our lifestyles to include more walking. Think about the city or town that you live in and whether or not it's conducive for walking. Do you have no choice but to use your car for everything? Or are there some areas where you can incorporate walking into your lifestyle and daily routines? If you are able to complete most or even some of your areas by walking, then consider saving the gas money, strapping on your walking shoes, and getting a low intensity workout while taking care of your tasks for the day. Incorporating walking into your everyday life is one of the easiest ways to fortify your metabolism and protect against unwanted weight gain. If you do live in an area that is car dependent and walking as a form of transportation is all but impossible, then you'll have to be a bit more intentional about making sure that you get in your steps and that you're walking more. I recommend 30 minutes of dedicated walking every day, preferably in an area where walking is ideal. But if not, a simple walk around your neighborhood, a walk around the block, or even in your parking lot at work, all counts. But whatever you do, use a treadmill as an option of last resort. You want to be outside, physically walking feet to pavement, or dirt, or grass, or water, whatever it is that you want to walk on. Pull up Google Maps and identify different parks, trails, and areas of your city that you'd like to explore. In the off chance that you are looking to move to a new city or a new part of town, then consider checking the walk score of that location so that you're at least informed of the walkability of that area when you're making your decisions. But whatever you do, make sure you are tapping into this highly evolved trait that defines humans in many ways and is one of the core aspects of our existence. Don't become another statistic, another casualty of the car-centric environment. Get outside and walk more. If you find this video useful or informative, then please do me a favor and share it with anybody who you think may also find it interesting. Also, consider subscribing to my weekly newsletter, which contains content like this delivered to your inbox every Thursday. And until next time, always remember to get up, get out, and get active. Peace.